No. So when you really think about this, it is one of the biggest rip-off ever in Antigua. And the thing about it is the way in which they have sought to use this so-called charity as a vehicle for fraud and to rip off the people of Antigua and Barbuda.
Can I interrupt you for a second, sir?
Of course.
I'm throwing this one outside. Because there's some tabloids in Antigua who don't understand what journalism is. But I notice I said tabloid. Because if Gaston says, me tell one dog move out the road, within 3 to 5 minutes, you see a flash on your smartphone or whatever. Prime Minister Browne says a dog was rushed out the road or mashed out the road. Blah, 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 blah. Which has no value, no intrinsic value any which way, shape, or form. But you can't tell people what to write. However, I hear you bi-weekly putting out information after information after information put up all over, and you don't see squat. Anyway, pay attention because some information will come out today. That's what I'm saying. Chief, right. I want you to interrupt you again.
No problem, man. Look, the cabinet on the 28th of October, at that meeting, they received a circulation note. That's like the proposal put to cabinet by the Honorable Malwin Joseph. He said to the cabinet that there was a parcel of land down at Lower North Street on the waterfront, right down between where the development is taking place for the cruise facility and the development that's taking place down at the port with the fisheries complex in that general area. And he came to cabinet and he said that 10,000 square feet of land is required for community purposes, that they should sell the 10,000 square feet of land to a charity called Share Incorporated. Share Incorporated has 3 persons in the company's registry that you can look to see. They're the 3 people who are supposed to be running it. It's Maria Browne, it's Samantha Marshall, and there's another young lady from the constituency of Rural East. I won't even bother to call her name because, she's not really involved in politics, and more likely than not, she participated because she's the clerk to Samantha Marshall. The mover and shaker of the charity, everybody knows, is a minister of government, Maria Browne. At the time, she was not a minister of government. And we did a valuation based on 3 separate proposals or separate valuations that had been done in order for us to get an idea of how much it costs. And the valuations ranged from $100 per square foot to $200 per square foot. So if it's 10,000 square feet, this land was valued at between $1 million and $2 million. So let's even say $1.5 million. Now, with land valued at $1.5 million, strategically located on the waterfront, where there is so much potential for national use and development, it's an area, if you're thinking in terms of culture, that would have been a perfect place to put a center where the steel bands from that area could perform for cruise ships, make some money, and allow for people in that community to make a living. It could have been a market for craft where you could establish a number of booths and so on and have people go there as a craft market. Again, a way of empowering persons. Or it could have been put to some other use which would have been for the benefit of people. Now, what I find almost criminal is that you have a prime minister. His wife is the principal in this charity. And he's not thinking, what good can we do for the people that elected me? He's not thinking, how can this national asset be used for the social good? The only thing that these people can ever think about is, how can we find a way to huff this land for the benefit of family and friends? Now, the land down there is part of 2 acres of land owned by the Port Authority. And so that's the other issue that shows how incompetent and corrupt these people are. The land was not even the property of the Crown. The land is owned by the Port Authority. And recently you heard the Prime Minister say that Share Incorporated owns the parcel of land. But if you go to the land registry, it is still in the name of the port.
Up to now?
Up to now. Somebody had sought to do a subdivision, and they have not completed the subdivision. And then you heard him say that the land east of Point FM, which is where the Point FM is on the 10,000 square feet of land. But east of that, you have the Escape and those other facilities. And he said in Parliament, that land is currently being transferred to private owners. Who are the private owners? Mother-in-law, family. The land that is owned by the port in that area. How could the port be thinking of giving up prime waterfront land in between 2 major developments, one for cargo and one for cruise? This is land that is a national asset to be used for the benefit of the people. Instead, they have found a way to take hold by way of purchase, not only the land that is owned, that is currently used by Point FM, but the land that is now used for Escape and other private commercial purposes.
Sir, I beg you, I say not going to interrupt,
okay,
but
no
me want clarification because, me not get as fast as other people. So, the port owns the land.
The port owns the land.
The port is looking to develop and expand.
Correct.
And while looking to develop and expand, you're taking up the land that they're supposed to develop and expand on.
Exactly. This is a time when the port should be looking to acquire land in order to make sure that the land that they now have for future expansion, it will be there.
And question, who would know the port expansion plan?
It would have to be the MP for the area, also the Prime Minister and the Chairman of Cabinet.
Enough said.
Now, here it is that they are selling land at a time when the port will be expanding and where this, in any event, should be land that is used for the purposes of giving people something that would benefit Antigua and Barbuda. So, Malwin Joseph brings this circulation note to Cabinet, and he says that the 10,000 square feet of land should be sold to Share a Charitable Foundation, the Share Charitable Foundation. Now, everybody knows that a charity is a non-profit organization for public benefit, not for private gain, for public benefit. And so they are now selling this land to Share Charitable Foundation, and they decide that they're going to sell the land for $30,000. Now, this is land worth between $1.5 and $2 million, and they're selling the land for $30,000. That's raw land. The building they sell for $70,000. But when you're looking at waterfront land, seafront, in the midst of two major developments. Think of the commercial potential for this, that the people of Antigua and Barbuda, and mark my word, today is the 17th of July, mark my word, if this is allowed to continue in the ownership as they're proposing, this land is going to be resold at some later date for at least $5 million. Because the time is going to come when the port is going to need land for expansion, or the fisheries complex is going to need land for expansion, or the cruise port is going to need land for expansion. And that is the only place where that expansion can take place. So you can imagine $30,000 is what they managed to get. This prime piece of land. Now, if you were saying they were empowering other Antiguans, suppose he had said, well, I'm the representative for St. John City West, and we are going to form a company or cooperative, and the young men and women of this constituency, we're going to make sure that they get a break in this area. You could say, well, okay, at least it is for the benefit of local people, and it will empower local people. But he doesn't think that way. And the only use that he can find for this is for sheer charitable foundation. No, if it was a case where sheer, as they said, was going to use it for community purposes, again, you wouldn't agree, but you would say it is for community purposes. But here is where the level of dishonesty, deception, duplicity, and sheer grabeliciousness and avarice come in. That they tell the cabinet, and as you pointed out, he fool off poor Malwin Joseph, because Malwin Joseph went to cabinet and he said this is going to be used for community purposes. It is going to be used, and it is in the cabinet decision. And I want everybody to understand, I'm not just talking off the top of my head. I'm referring to a cabinet decision that I have in my hand. And the date of the cabinet decision is October 28th, 2015. And it is here. It cannot be refuted. That they said that the building will continue to be utilized for community purposes. Now, here it is.
The cabinet decision?
The cabinet decision says the building will continue to be utilized for community purposes.
Who brought that to the cabinet?
Malwin Joseph.
Minister Malwin Joseph.
That's correct.
So he was firmly of the opinion that when he presented that to cabinet, that land down there and that building would be used for community purposes.
It is the only logical explanation too, so I can understand why he might have said that. Because nobody in their right mind or conscience could agree to the sale of this amazing piece of real estate for $3 a square foot at a time like that. So he must have also been of that view. Well, I'm saying that, but maybe he was part of it. But I would think that he couldn't be so wicked. And they said, and this is another part that I want us to pay attention to. They said that they were going to spend, and this is part of the cabinet decision, cabinet notes that the foundation is prepared to spend more than $200,000 to repair and expand the structure to make it a center for the benefit of the entire community. So they're going and they're saying to their cabinet colleagues, well, we're going to use this for the benefit of the community. But guess what? Shear is going to even spend $200,000 so that the community can benefit. But a year later, there was a story that appeared in the Daily Observer written by Linroy Samuel. And in that article, Linroy Samuel states unequivocally that Gaston Browne made a statement to Parliament. And in that statement he said we have given, or Share Incorporated has given $200,000 to a group doing a media project. Ah, boy, the plot thickens.
200,000 to a media group?
200,000 to a media group. So now, if you don't know what's happening, and you look at this, you say, okay, Share Charitable Foundation. All right, is a charity. A charity taking a building. The building is going to be used for community purposes, and the circulation note goes on to say, Cabinet agreed also that the building will be used for health education purposes. So they say, all right, we have the building, going to be used for community purposes, going to be used for health education purposes, and they're going to give $200,000 to a media group who are doing a project in the area. All right, so everything sounds like it's all nice and good and you're helping people. Oh, Lord, what a tangled web we weave. So you ask yourself now, Mr. Algernon Watts.
Yes, you got it right.
Go down to the said parcel of land. On your left, when you're going down, you will see Escape and Discotheque and Bar and so on. Government land that they have decided to use for family purposes. Okay, so you're past that. Then you come to another building. And this is the one that is in question here for Share Incorporated. This is the one that is to be used for community and health education purposes. And then you remember, 200,000 to a media entity. And then you see a media entity there. A media entity is right there on the piece of land. Well, my brother Alex, I know you're into hotel, but I want you to tell me, do you know the name of that media entity there?
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay, then. Okay. Well, if people do not know, take a trip down there. The media entity, let me say a media entity, because they didn't say which media entity got the money. But put one and one together.
They say?
Put one and one together. And I challenge him to say that it is not Point FM that got the $200,000. Okay, now they will say again, well, 200,000 from Share given to Point, so what? So what? When you're a charity and you go out and you beg money and you tell people this money is to help children in need, help people who sick, this is to help people, school children who need things, this is to do charitable things for people, and you see that the media entity, $200,000 right there, Point FM, community purposes, health education purposes. I ask the question, who is benefiting from health education from that building? Who is benefiting for community purposes from that building? It is a shameful and a disgraceful abuse of public resources. It is the use of public resources for personal benefit and gain. And any dictionary that you go to and look up the meaning of corruption, that is the meaning of corruption. The use of public resources for personal benefit. That's what it is. But you see, when you look for the fingerprints, you find Malvin Joseph fingerprints. He is the one who brought the circulation note. So he gone under the bus. Then you say, who is the owner? Share Incorporated. So poor Maria, she now is in the frame. She now has to give account. She now has to say, where did Share Incorporated get that money? Because let us not forget that when we examined the CIP accounts, $2.7 million was given to a venture capital fund. And we were hearing at the time, around the same time, that the Share Incorporated were going to partner with the government for a venture capital project. So this whole thing is just so murky. And what they try to do is shift the money here and there on the different names and purposes. But if you put one and one together and you have common sense, you can see exactly what is taking place. And so, this 2.7 million, we want the government to come out and make a straight declaration. Who got that money? Who got that money for the venture capital fund? Just say who got it. Because there is no clear indication as to who got it. And the media entity, we call on the government to say, who is the media entity that got the funds that were used at the from Share Incorporated? And to all the donors who gave to Share Incorporated, you need to ask to what purpose that was beneficial to the general public of Antigua and Barbuda were your funds used. Because it is not good enough. That will spoil the name of Antigua. When you go around and you tell people you have a charity and people give to the charity in good conscience and good faith, believing that this money is going to be utilized for charitable purposes, and the money instead is utilized for other purposes, it is a fraud upon those people that you've committed. And then we heard the Prime Minister say a week ago in Parliament that Share Incorporated is now a shareholder in Point FM. And not only a shareholder in Point FM, we now hear that Point FM is renting the building from Share Incorporated. So we need to also find out as a charity, what is that money being used for? How is it that Point FM can be operated as a commercial radio station, soliciting advertisements, making money on the false pretenses? That's what's happening in Antigua today. It is a huge and monumental rip-off. But I am so sad because here, this is an asset that could have been for the benefit of our people. And all that these people can think of doing is huffing it for their own benefit. And so you have a situation now where the only people who are now going to be investigated, because they will be investigated, poor Maria. Poor Maria, she is the one who's going to have to face the music. She is the one who's going to have to explain how is it that her charity ended up being a landlord? How is it that her charity ended up being shareholder in her husband's radio station? What kind of charity is that? She is the one who should come to the people of Antigua and Barbuda and say, who are the beneficiaries of this charity? They said they were going to give money to help young women in business. Who are the young women who benefited? They said they were going to give $100,000 to the VC Bird Trust for a museum. Where is the museum? Where is the $100,000? They said they gave $200,000 to a media entity. Who is the media entity? And is the media entity the same media entity that your husband is on every single Saturday? So when everybody else has to work and toil and make ends meet, they are going at issues and using funds obtained under false pretenses. These are things that must be investigated because a charity is established under law, and a charity has a duty to account for the funds that they collect. Because if you're a charity, you are not like an ordinary company. If you establish an ordinary company and you call it whatever, LTD or Inc. or whatever, then there's nothing wrong. You use it and you make as much profit as you want because it is a company that is incorporated for the purpose of business and making profit. But when you incorporate a charity, it is to be used solely, only, and exclusively for charitable purposes. And charitable purposes mean that you're helping sick children, you're helping school children, you're helping old people, you're doing things that are beneficial and good for the public. It is a crying shame that they could be so unconscionable to do something like this. And so As far as I'm concerned, we're going to have to step up the ante on this. We are going to get the Integrity Commission involved, and we know who is the chairman of the Integrity Commission. But it is the position that is there nonetheless, and we have to go there. The second thing is, and we're taking advice on it, when the cabinet sought to transfer this land, to sell this land, to share incorporated, it was not in cabinet's place to do so, because the land is in the name of the Antigua and Barbuda Port Authority. And if you look at the land register, you will see the instrument number 2754/2003. The Port Authority is the owner, a statutory body established pursuant to the provisions of the Port Authority Act, Chapter 333 of the 1992 Revised Laws of Antigua and Barbuda, with registered office situate at the Deepwater Harbor, St. John's, Antigua. So the Port Authority is a separate entity to the cabinet. The cabinet can make a decision in relation to crown lands or government lands. Cabinet has no authority over lands that are owned by a statutory body. And so if it is that they're going to come now and say that the Port Authority decided to reverse the decision, the Port Authority can't do that. Cabinet has not up to now reversed the decision that was taken. And we're taking advice at the moment, and we are going to pursue this matter and seek to have this transaction set aside, because the cabinet had no authority to sell that land. The land belonged to the Port Authority. So we want to know if it's a case where they went back to the Port Authority and they did a creeper, and they said that the Port Authority decided to sell the land to Share Incorporated. Because if they did so, we're going to want to know, when did you do so? Was there a full board meeting? And if it was a full board meeting, we are going to go and find out who were the board members and why would the board members sell land belonging to this statutory body at this unconscionably low price in these circumstances. Why would the Port Authority do so? And if they did so, did all the members agree with that? Because we are going to cite each member as a party to this matter. We want to know, why did you do it?
The minutes of that board meeting don't have to reflect that decision.
That is correct, because the board members have a fiduciary responsibility.
Correct. Yep.
When public property is placed under their management and control and in their trust, they do not have the right to sell it as they like for little or nothing. That can't be right. That the port has an asset that is worth $2 million, between $1 and $2 million. We put it at $1.5 million. That you have an asset that is entrusted to you, that is so valuable. Where do you get the power and authority to sell that for peppercorn price to the family and the friends of the Prime Minister? Where you get that authority? And where have you found a redefinition of corruption? That is corruption. And my brother, I'm telling you, this is a matter that we are not going to allow to sit down, because it is wrong in every sense of the word. And it is important that we pursue it using all legal avenues available. And so I just want to say, this is a matter about which we should not be complacent, because we're talking about public assets. And we're talking not just about Antiguans and Barbudans being empowered. This has to do with the empowerment of those persons who are within the circle of the Prime Minister. A major asset, prime waterfront real estate. The cabinet has to give account of what they did, and the Port Authority Board will have to give account of what they did. This will not be allowed to rest like this.
Can I ask you to add one more to that? Could you ask Malwin Joseph if this is what he envisioned when he bought that before the cabinet?
Absolutely. So he will be given an opportunity to clear himself, or for him to say, well, he too was part of the scheme. But it wouldn't be complete, my brother, if I didn't show the pattern. I know we can't deal with it in detail today, but I just want to say, under the United Progressive Party, up at Long Bay, we had a plan for a public beach park. That public beach park would have benefited the entire nation. It would have been the envy of the Eastern Caribbean. We had envisioned where in that public beach park at Long Bay, you would have had fine dining restaurant, you'd have had vendors mall, you'd have had water sports facility, public restrooms and showers, you would have had parking, we would have had a children's play area, we'd have had a beach bar and grill, plus 2 other restaurants. All of those for local empowerment. All of those. In fact, I'm looking at my brother Alex now, and as I'm saying it, I remember when he came to see me with another Antiguan and Barbudan at that time, they were discussing the same idea. You remember, Alex?
Yep.
They were discussing the same idea, because when they heard that we were going to have restaurants for local people, I remember Alex, and I think it was Mr. Grant, they came and they said, hello, where I come from? Antigua? Where we born? Up in the east. Well, if you put in a project like that up in the east, as local people and with the necessary skills, we would like to at least be considered. And that's fair enough. But that was a legitimate aspiration for any Antiguan and Barbudan business person to aspire to own one of those restaurants that would have been built in that area. However, if you go up there today, it is nothing but bush and cassie and wasteland. Nothing. And what is even more egregious, what is even more terrible, what is even more unconscionable is the fact that the land is no longer owned by Antiguans and Barbudans. The land is owned by a company known as Ocean Jewels Limited. And who is the principal of Ocean Jewels Limited? It is a woman by the name of Sissy Lou. Where does Sissy Lou live? In Hong Kong. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal, and that article said that they went to Hong Kong to follow the address that is given. And when they went there and they asked the person who was at the reception desk, where is the principal? They said they don't know anything about no principal. Where is Ocean Jewels Limited? They said they don't know anything about Ocean Jewels Limited. They said they went back the following week. And when they went back the following week to the Tower Block in Hong Kong, the office locked down. These are the people we have owning land in Antigua. You can't even find the owner. Who brought them here? Gaston Browne brought them here. You remember when they were doing West Indies oil? And he said that the man they had there, a man by the name of Mr. Zhao, and Mr. Zhao was supposed to be the mover and shaker and the person who would bring the investment money to West Indies oil. And then he, by some sort of fancy footwork, we don't know how it happened, we then heard of another company known as Fancy Bridge. And then Mr. Zhao went back to Hong Kong. And then one day he was at the, I think it was the Four Seasons Hotel in Hong Kong, relaxing, watching TV, knock, knock on the door. Who is there? Chinese police. Chinese police took him over to mainland China, and we've never heard a word or seen anything of this Mr. Zhao again.
No, our 120 passport.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yes.
my. And you see the land up at Long Bay, and you ask yourself, who is Sissy Lou? Who is she? What is to happen to this land? That is land that could have been developed for the benefit of our people. The land now known as wasteland. But the part of it that is most egregious, the only person who is smiling out of that transaction is a man by the name of Andron Browne III. Gaston Andron Browne III, the son of the Prime Minister, who made a cool $2 million off of that deal. So, is the trend I'm showing you. You go down to North Street in Point, you see who benefit. You go up to Long Bay, you see who benefit. But one thing you never see the name Gaston Browne. He moved his fingerprints on everything. So he threw his son under the bus. He threw his wife under the bus. He threw his mother-in-law under the bus. He threw Malwin Joseph under the bus. But in the end, he is the only person, the common factor in all of those relationships and those individuals.
Yeah, but we're going to talk about his baby mother land too. But we can talk about that when we come back.
There's so much you can talk about.
So much you can talk about.
Mr. and Mrs. Brown, call in and tell the people if Mr. Lovell is lying. Call in right now.
You go wait.